It's Local Drive at any time. If you'd like to join the conversation, you can give us a call. 1300 903 222. We live in a part of Queensland where there are an above-average amount of car crashes, accidents and fatalities. The area around Federal and the bottleneck into the state's capital are all areas where cars crash frequently. If you've ever been involved in a fender bender or car crash, then you'd be well aware that rehabilitation, if you've been injured, can sometimes take a very long time. Have you ever considered the psychological effects that a car crash can have on kids, your children? Professor Justin Kenardy is involved in a study at Conrod, the Centre of National Research on Disability and Rehabilitation Medicine. Professor, often it can take adults a very long time to deal with the trauma of a car accident. What long-term effects can it have on a child?
Well, most children who've had a car accident and have had some kind of injury recover pretty well out of the experience, but a small but significant proportion have ongoing psychological distress associated with the events surrounding the accident. So that's around about for 15% of kids. So it's about 1 in 6.
What kind of psychological effects are we talking about?
Well, it can be trying to remember or remembering parts of the event, but actually not being able to prevent those kinds of memories from coming to their mind. It can be distress when they have remind events. So, for example, being near where the accident occurred, or being in a car again, or maybe even experiences around what happened after the accident. So they might remember going into the hospital, for example, if they were admitted or they had some kind of injury, and finding that quite distressing, having problems with sleep potentially, possibly even things like change in their behaviour, becoming perhaps a bit more irritable and at times, sometimes a little bit more defiant. So there's a whole range of behaviours, sometimes feeling a bit more clingy to their parents, or wanting to stick to routines and not wanting to go to school even.
Can you tell me about the study or research that you've been in? How many children were tested and what age groups did you test?
Well, in this particular study that we're talking about, we looked at around about 200 kids, and we assessed what happened to them over time. And of that group, we looked specifically at kids who had some signs of this distress early on. And we discovered that if we provide those kids that have had those early signs of distress with a fairly simple web-based intervention, it seems to help them to recover. It seems to actually prevent the ongoing disturbances that you might see.
What do you mean by web-based intervention? Can you tell me about these particular tools?
It's basically information we gave to kids. We also gave parallel information to the parents, so they had all of the information that kids had. And the information was really promoting coping with the kids, helping them to think of healthy ways to adjust to the events that they've had and understand them, helping them to use tools and skills to better relax and to reduce their distress, and promoting a view of themselves as recovering and being able to actually move forward from those events. So it was really, the tools are really about trying to promote resilience for the children, and giving the information to parents as well meant that the parents could reinforce those kinds of thoughts and that information to the child.
I'm talking to Professor Justin Kenardy this afternoon. Professor Justin Kenardy is with CONROD, Centre of National Research on Disability and Rehabilitation Medicine, and he's been involved in a study, a research there, as you heard, involving 200 children in terms of tools to reduce trauma with kids that have been involved in car accidents. What were the findings?
The findings were that if kids had that initial distress, that is within the first couple of weeks, week or so after the accident itself, they were much more likely to respond to this simple type of intervention. But if they had that early distress and they weren't given this simple intervention, they tended to go on to develop more significant problems. In comparison, those kids who didn't have that early distress, they really didn't need the intervention. So whether they got that intervention or not made no difference to them. They essentially recovered.
What will you do with the findings?
We are promoting the use of that website via the CONROD website, and we're engaged with other groups such as the hospitals to inform parents who come through the system that of the value of that site and that the site is available for their use. The site's freely available and accessible to anyone.
Professor Justin Kenardy there, who's involved in that particular research at CONROD, the Centre of National Research on Disability and Rehabilitation Medicine.